So what language is your operating system running on? Not English, not the words you use in a meeting or in a text message or the language you use in an email. I'm talking about the language that runs underneath all of that, self-talk, the internal dialogue that's happening below your conscious awareness. It happens every time you face a decision, every time you feel pressure, every time you wonder whether you're actually capable of doing the job that your title suggests. That language is not neutral. It's not just commentary on your life. It is the programming code your identity runs on. And if you've never examined it, you're almost certainly running code that was written well before you were old enough to understand it and well before you were old enough to write your own. That's what this video is about, because very few people, even experts, are drawing a connection between language and the results that they are getting. In my coaching practice, I use a process, a methodology I call personal operating system. And the first component of the personal operating system is strategic vision. It's your foundation, your values, your mission, where you're going and why you want to go there. The second is language reprogramming. Language is your interface. It's a component we are going to spend the entire video on today because it is the one that almost nobody addresses at the depth it requires. The third is rhythms and routines. You've all heard of that. This is your execution, the daily practices that make everything else stick, your habits. Well, most people get stuck because they try to build the third component before they address the second. They try to change the habits and behaviors while still running the same language patterns underneath. That's like trying to run new software on an old operating system. The behaviors will not hold because the interface was never upgraded. Language reprogramming is the interface. It has 5 specific components. We're going to walk through all 5 of those today. Your language is not describing your life, it is actually building it. See, I think most people think that language is descriptive, that you experience something and then you use words to describe what happened. I think we have that backwards. Language is actually generative. It does not describe your reality, it constructs it. When you say, I can't handle this pressure, you're not making an observation. You're actually writing code. Your brain receives that statement as instruction and begins building the neurological infrastructure to make it happen, to make it true. Steve Zaffron and Dave Logan, in their research on performance, put it plainly. How a situation occurs to you arises in language. 2 men may face the same challenge. One says, well, that's impossible. The other says, well, this requires creative problem solving. Same situation, different language, different performance, different life, and different results. The language that you use every day is either building the person you are becoming or reinforcing the person that you have been, future or past. So which one is it doing for you right now? The 3 laws of performance come directly from the work of Steve Zaffron and Dave Logan. I built a language reprogramming framework for Futureself architecture around them because they explain exactly why language is not cosmetic. It's structural. Law number 1 says, we don't see the world the way it is. We see the world the way we are, complete with everything from our past. Think about what that means practically. 2 executives getting the same email from the boss that says, can we talk today? One reads that email and thinks, what have I done wrong? The other reads that email and says, wow, I get to meet with the boss. Maybe we get to collaborate on something new. Same 4 words, completely different internal experience. That difference is not personality. It is the operating system interpreting the information through its own lens. Your childhood operating system has been narrating your reality for decades. And that narration is so familiar, you stop noticing it as a narration, you think it's the truth. The second law of performance says, how a situation occurs to you arises in language. The narration is not happening in images or feelings, it is happening in words, language, specific words. Words you've been using so long, they have worn grooves into your thinking. Words like, I should, or I have to, or I can't say no, or they need me to. These are not neutral phrases. I think I might have something that might really help. I want you to listen to the language of your operating system, not someone else's, yours. Listen for these phrases in your own internal dialogue. Do it this week. Language like I should. I should is an obligation language. It's not you choosing, it's code telling you that you really have no choice, even though you do. I can't. That is limitation language. It's not an honest assessment of capability. It's your operating system defending its current boundaries. They need me to do that. That's actually accommodation language. It's the code that keeps you overcommitted, overextended, and exhausted while telling you this is a virtue. If I don't, they will. Well, that's language of fear. It's fear dressed up as logic. Every one of those phrases is the old operating system thinking. And every time you repeat them, you reinforce the code. Your future self does not speak that language. He speaks in choices, not obligation. He says, choose to instead of have to. He says, my capacity is, he says, I will honor my boundary here because. The same situations, different language, different meaning, different person. The second component of language reprogramming is called rackets. A racket is a persistent complaint that maintains old code. It is a self-reinforcing loop that sounds like honest observation, but is actually a defense mechanism. And here's how a racket works. You have an operating system that limits you. That operating system generates a thought that justifies the limitation. You act on that thought. The action produces a result that confirms the thought was right. And then the operating system points out the result as proof that nothing should change. Example, authoritarian operating system. This operating system is built on the idea that my worth is determined by my performance. The thought, I cannot set boundaries because people need me. The action, you say yes to everything, overcommit, and run at maximum capacity. The result, people continue relying on you excessively, and the operating system says, see, I told you they needed you. You can't stop now. The racket is self-sealing. Every piece of evidence confirms it. This is what makes it so hard to break. The person running this racket does not experience it as a loop. He experiences it as a reality. This is just how my life is. This is just who I am. People depend on me, but it's not reality, it's code, and the code can be rewritten. You have a racket. I say that with confidence because every person I've ever coached has at least one, most times more. And here's how you find yours. Think about a complaint you've been carrying for more than 2 years. A persistent frustration about your work or your relationships or a health or a circumstance that never seems to fully resolve. Something you've explained to others more than once. Now ask yourself this question. What does maintaining that complaint allow you to avoid? Accountability is the short answer. Because rackets are never accidental. They serve a function. They protect you from something that feels more threatening than the complaint itself. The person who complains that leadership does not recognize my work is protecting themselves against the possibility that maybe they haven't done anything to deserve any appreciation. The complaint is more comfortable than the alternative. Now, I'm not saying that to be harsh. I'm saying it because the moment you see the function your racket is serving, you have the choice to put it down. Most people never do it. Most people never see it. They just keep carrying it. What are you carrying? The third and fourth components of language reprogramming are rescripting and self-talk reforming or self-talk reformation. These two work together, so I'm going to address them together. Your operating system has a voice, a negative voice. I call it malware. It's the internal narrator that defends the corrupted code by telling you stories about why you cannot change, why this is just who you are, why your circumstances make growth impossible. The malware has specific characteristics you can learn to recognize. It uses absolute language, always, never, should, must. It speaks in certainty speaks uncertainty about things that are not certain. It focuses on fear, obligation, guilt, or entitlement. It does not invite growth. It argues for staying exactly where you are. If it sounds harsh, critical, demanding, or even anxious, but this is important. This is the important part. It sounds like you. It uses your vocabulary. It references your values and your history. That is what makes it so convincing. Your authentic voice is different, however. It uses nuanced language. Sometimes, might, could, choose. It acknowledges difficulty without using difficulty as a reason to stop. It gets quieter when you listen to it rather than louder because it does not need to fight to be heard. It simply tells the truth. Here's a practical test I think is very helpful. When you hear a thought, ask one question. Is this thought expanding my possibilities or limiting them? The malware always limits, always. Even when it sounds like wisdom, even when it sounds like realism, I'm just being honest about my limitations is the malware. Your authentic voice can acknowledge a limitation and still ask, what is possible within it? There is a voice inside your head that's been narrating your life since childhood. And for most people, that voice has never been examined. Here's how you start. I want you to write down 3 thoughts you regularly have about yourself and your limitations. 3 things you say internally when you are under pressure, when you miss the mark, or when you're deciding whether to take a risk. Now read each one and ask, does this sound like compassion or criticism? Does it expand what feels possible or shrink it? Does it get louder when I push back or quieter? If it's loud and critical, absolute and resistant, that's malware talking. So your authentic voice doesn't need to shout. It does not need to repeat itself. It states what is true and waits for you to act on it. The work of self-talk reformation is not silencing the malware permanently. It's learning to hear the difference between the 2 voices so clearly that you can stop mistaking one for the other. That skill alone changes how you lead, how you decide, and how you treat yourself under pressure. The 5th component of language reprogramming is called declarations. And I want to use this section to address something most people have already tried and written off as nonsense: affirmations. I had a client, we'll call her Jennifer in the book, and she's actually a composite of several clients. But she was a person. Her name wasn't Jennifer. She did affirmations for 6 months. She said, in front of the mirror, I am confident, I am capable, I am worthy of success, I trust myself completely. And you know what happened? Nothing. Nothing changed. When her board challenged her strategy, her stomach still dropped. When her team looked to her for direction, she still felt like an imposter. 6 months of daily affirmations and the operating system had not changed. The reason is not that language does not work. The reason is that she was using the wrong language. Dr. Andrew Newberg's research on the neuroscience of language shows that words literally change brain structure. Positive, future-focused language activates the frontal lobe and begins forming new neural pathways. But, and this is the critical piece, the language has to be accepted by the subconscious as credible, not rejected as false. When you stand in front of a mirror and say, I am confident and capable, the subconscious doesn't believe it. The subconscious does not stay silent. It responds. And you know what its response is? Cortisol, stress, defensiveness. It actually strengthens the existing neural pathways rather than building new ones. You cannot install new code using language the system rejects as false. Affirmations fail not because the concept is wrong, but because most people are using descriptive language when they need to be using generative or regenerative language. Descriptive language states what is currently true. I am confident. If the subconscious does not believe that, it reacts to the statement and releases cortisol, reinforces the existing pattern. You end up more entrenched than when you started. Generative language states what is becoming true. It creates new possibilities rather than claiming a current reality that has not arrived yet. I am becoming a man who leads with confidence is generative. It's credible to the subconscious because it does not claim something already achieved. It names a direction. I am learning to trust my own judgment is generative. I notice that my default is self-doubt and I am choosing differently is generative. The difference is subtle but neurologically significant. One language the subconscious accepts, the other it rejects. Your declarations need to be written in language your operating system can receive. That's the difference between 6 months of affirmations that change nothing and language that begins rewiring the system from the inside out. If you take one thing from this video and use it today, make it this. For the next 7 days, notice every time you say, I have to, and swap it with, I choose to. Instead of saying, I have to take this call, no, I choose to take this call. I have to stay late. No, I choose to stay late. I have to respond to this. No, I choose to. That swap is not semantic. It moves you from obligation to agency. It moves the operating system from a program running automatically to a person making conscious decisions. And every time you make that swap, you are rewriting a small piece of code. Most people read this and say, well, that sounds great, and they don't do anything about it. The old code is protecting itself. I would say do it anyway. Do it for 7 days and notice what shifts. See, language is the interface of your operating system. Change the language and you begin changing the system. Language reprogramming is 1/3 of a personal operating system. Strategic vision is the foundation. Language is the interface, and rhythms and routines or habits are the execution. You can have the clearest vision in the world, but if the language running underneath it is still speaking obligation, limitation, and fear, the vision will not hold. The operating system will protect the old code every time. The work we covered today, you'll find in my Futureself architecture series, available on Amazon and Kindle. A paperback version is less than a cheap lunch. And if you still haven't started the diagnosis, volume 1, that's where the work begins. It will show you exactly which operating system you've installed from your childhood and why your language patterns look the way they do. So like, subscribe, share this with someone that might need it. More information in the description below. Thank you for tuning in.